Springfield's Talk 1041. Welcome to the show. My name is Nick Reed. Hope everyone's doing well. Those cold temperatures, just all on top of us. It's brutally cold stuff. And be careful if you're out in it. That's really all the advice I have. The roads are relatively on pace, I think, with where one would expect them to be. I know there were a lot of school cancellations, which it really didn't surprise me. The girl child yesterday asked, she said, do you think we'll have school? And I said, well, none of this is going to melt off. And there just are some of those outer roads that they never get to. They get cleared whenever there is either enough regular traffic that it just clears it out on its own, or it melts away. And neither of those things are going to happen in some of those more rural areas. So it wouldn't surprise me if they don't, for that reason, cancel. And of course, there were cancellations taking place. If that was the reason why, I don't really know necessarily. But point being is, I think you're probably going to find what you expect when it comes to the roads out there. Of course, been talking about how the upside of the weather this week is no ice, which greatly diminishes the likelihood of any sort of power outages. That being said, I woke up 3 o'clock this morning. We had no power.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And here, let me tell you how I woke up. We have we've got a pretty automated home. And so all of the lighting throughout our home is controlled through one centralized unit. And of course, it can be done remotely. Evidently, the hardware/software that is involved in the lighting throughout our home, whenever it goes from no power to power, it does 3 pulse flashes in order to let you know that it's functioning properly. Well, prior to the electricity going off completely, there was I don't know how long it apparently was happening by maybe around 2:30 or so. I woke up at 3. The power every 2 minutes would go off and come back on. And so our entire house, every 2 minutes, every single light would flash 3 times really brightly. And then you'd hear the microwave beep, the refrigerator beep, and of course the cycling issues with the HVAC unit, the heater. So it was very annoying. I imagine
it sounds kind of like the start of a horror movie,
right?
While you're walking down the hallway and the lights are flickering.
That's what I thought. If anybody's awake in the neighborhood and they're like, "What is going on over there?" And it's sort of I say pulse. That's the best word I can think of to describe it, because our lights, they don't. And a lot of you have lights that are similar in fashion. Instead of just, you flick it on, boom, it's on and then off. It's a fast fade. But whenever it's doing that confirmation that it is, back online or receiving power, it's a very fast on, and then it's not a slow fade, but a quick fade. So it was like, boom. Almost like you see a flash from a camera done in a movie, how it's
Right.
that real fast, bright, and then sort of the quick fade away, and it would just do that 3 times in a row. And then another 2 minutes later, it would do that again. And then the alarm system and I was like, I just wish it would go off completely. And eventually it did. I don't know what time it did. I just know that all of a sudden my alarm went off. I was like, I fell back asleep. And it was still off by the time I got here to work. So I swear I could feel the house getting colder. Fortunately, we have great insulation. Of course, you hear me talk about our windows with St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements, and all that helps. But I thought selfishly, well, I guess I'm glad I'm going to work where the heat is. As for the rest of the family,
They're all their own.
I hope that things get better.
We'll figure it out.
I got here, and there was a text from my wife saying she seemed like she was asleep when I left, but a lot of times, she's not actually asleep. And she had texted just saying, be careful, and I hope the power comes back on soon. It's like, I hope it does too. So for all the talk and the security of knowing that the diminished likelihood of power outages occurring because of no ice, and here it's my little parcel of the world. It was kind of, there's a movie called, I think it's 30 Days of Night,
Oh, uh-huh.
And it's actually, I like it. It's a pretty good movie. Josh Hartnett is in it, and it is about this um, village. It's a mining village, I believe, somewhere in Alaska or thereabouts. That once a year there is 30 days of no sunlight, and so these vampires determine, well, that'd be a good place to go and hunt people because hey, we don't have to worry about it being daylight for 30 days. And as I left the house, and there's like no lights anywhere, like no porch lights, no sidewalk lights, no, there just no, the only light was from the moon and of course the reflecting off of all the snow and everything, and it was just sort of a surreal feeling, just the quiet of everything, and because no traffic at that time, and no lights anywhere to be seen. If you live out in the country, of course, that's something that you become accustomed to, but when you live in a neighborhood, it's just, I don't know, it's just not really eerie, but something actually I kind of liked about it. So anyway, there's my random nonsensical weather talk for the morning.
I like it.
Of course, you're out in the country.
Yeah, I know. While
country
you were
boy.
explaining that, I'm like, that just sounds
Yeah.
normal to
Yeah,
me.
I know.
I know. Well, it was really nice to be in studio and see adults.
Yeah,
I
it's
was
good to have you back in studio.
Thank you. I
were
was snowed in with a
strapped in.
2.5-year-old, so watched a lot of cartoons, did a lot of coloring.
Yeah, and I don't think it's until Saturday we're supposed to give above free. Well, we'll get to the weather
Yeah.
here in just a minute. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 15, but wind chill values as low as -20. Tonight mostly clear with a low around -2. For your Friday, mostly sunny with a high near 29. And on Saturday, we're going to have us a little warm front here, sunny with a high near 38.
Trump lays out a plan to work with Republicans in Congress to dramatically cut taxes. Speaking at a summit in Miami, Florida yesterday, announcing his plans for the largest tax cuts in American history. Quote, we're going to dramatically cut taxes for families and for workers and for companies, including no tax on tips and hopefully no tax on Social Security and no tax on overtime. The president laid out his vision for the tax cuts, which included being able to expense 100% of the construction of a new factory in the U.S. and reducing taxes for oil and gas producers. Trump's plan calls on implementing tariffs on cars, semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, and lumber, among other things, which the president said that he will announce in the next month or so. Now, if people can, I know most of you can, that's why we're having this conversation, set aside the emotional, political component of all this, it's pretty clear what is occurring. This is really straightforward stuff. Trump is creating conditions that will make it more favorable for businesses to have their businesses housed in the United States of America. We've talked about this on a number of occasions. We've seen how it is Trump approaches situations like this when dealing with world leaders. You determine what motivates them. What is their goal? What is their driving force? What is it they want? And then you create conditions that cater to that without not only without sacrificing what it is that you want, but you craft it in a manner to where what you want satisfies what it is that they want as well. It really is. That is a boiling down of his approach when it comes to dealing with people and how it is to get people to do what you want them to do. You could see it in the way that he dealt with Kim Jong-un of North Korea. Kim Jong-un wants to, he's this guy and wants to be relevant. He's kind of psychotic and crazy, but he wants attention, wants to be relevant. So how is it that Trump got him to, at the time, abandon his nuclear ambitions? Told him, listen, don't you realize you could be like the center of the world, man? You've got all this beautiful real estate here. You've got the resources, you're just not using them. I mean, you could be a destination place in the world. You could be the sort of place that people look to and be like, man, North Korea is awesome. Played into that. What is it that people who run businesses not just want to do, but what is it necessary for them to do in order for the business to succeed? It's to be profitable. Yeah, you run a company, you are a CEO of a company, you own a company, you are a decision maker for a company. Your goal is to make sure that that company does well. What Trump is proposing here is to not only, and it's twofold. It is make the United States a more desirable place for somebody who wants to make a profit to house their industry, while at the same time making it less desirable to do it elsewhere. So how do you do that? All right. You look at the, quote, cost of doing business in the United States, and a tremendous amount of the cost, or at least those that the government has control over, are regulations and taxes. So Trump looks at that and says, all right, well, we can make it much more attractive for an industry that wants to be profitable to be in the United States by saying we're going to make it cheaper than it currently is for you to do business here in the United States. We're going to cut taxes. We're going to roll back regulations. And by the way, in addition to that, if you are currently in Mexico or you're currently in, whatever other country, we're going to put tariffs, which makes it more expensive. So it's a double whammy. It's a double encouragement. It's a double incentive for people to move their businesses and their companies here to the United States of America. Now, of course, the tariffs serve a couple of different purposes. Because I don't believe that Trump's ultimate goal is to get every single industry in existence to move to the United States. But if they are housed in another country in which the other country is taking advantage through tariffs and trade of the United States, which has happened for a very long time with a number of different countries, this is, these trade deficits, as long as these industries are housed in a country in which we are fairly on an even playing field when it comes to trade deficits, then, okay, fine, stay there. That's cool. That's no problem. But when we have issues or problems in which that, those particular countries are, whether it's trade deficit or they are manufacturing and importing drugs into the country or whatever it may be, then of course utilize the tariffs. You realize every single one of these scenarios are about making things better for the United States of America. Whether it is national security, whether it is the economy, whether it is the number of jobs that are well-paying jobs in this country, whatever it is, that's really what it boils down to. We're so accustomed, and I think lawmakers are so accustomed, many of them, to having their eye on some other ball. Their offices 98% of the time are populated by lobbyists, by K Street lobbyists, by special interest groups. And I'm not saying all lobbyists and special interest groups have nefarious goals. Oftentimes they're good goals. But it's just this constant line of people that are wanting something for their particular industry that you like got this Jenga game going on, whereas Trump's approach is, hey, just what's going to work out best for the United States. And let's do that. And if this is going to, in his assessment, lead to it, then so be it. And so it's going to be interesting, this dual approach, which makes total sense because the dual approach when it comes to lowering taxes for corporations in the United States while raising tariffs on corporations outside the United States when it comes to the products that they import, it's all about the exact same thing, making it advantageous financially to have your business in the United States. The left, however, we know, hates tax cuts for corporations. They hate that. They because corporations are supposed to, quote, pay their fair share. On the other hand, because Trump is somebody that has been utilizing tariffs and they're against everything Trump is for, they talk about how awful tariffs are because tariffs just, they're going to cost the consumer because the cost gets, passed down to the consumer. Well, the interesting thing or the problem, if you're looking at it from a common sense standpoint, that the left has in attacking those two things is because, they attack tariffs because they claim that it makes it too expensive to do business, but then they are attacking tax cuts, which makes it less expensive to do business. So they have a contradictory approach to those two things. Whereas Trump's approach is consistent because the ultimate goal is to make it financially advantageous to have your business housed here in the United States. That's the stated goal. Now, it would be interesting to hear a Democrat articulate what their stated goal is when they are against tariffs, but for increasing taxes on corporations. What is the stated goal with those two things in mind? Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Hey, we're back on YouTube.
That's right.
Yes, off a couple days because Sarah was snowed in, as were a lot of you, and she's the one that sets all that up and controls that. So that's why that wasn't happening. It feels somehow very freeing when that's not on.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm like,
Don't have to do your hair or anything, right?
Yeah, I just take my shirt off. That's what I did, actually.
Attaboy.
I had my shirt off when I was doing the show the last couple days in here. KSGF.com. Okay, so you can still, two things. Register to win tickets for the 4th annual KY3 Women's Show at the Ozark Empire Fairgrounds. That is coming up Saturday, March 1st.
I'll be out there.
Yes, you will be out there. Are we going to have prize?
I think we're gonna do like a register to win lunch bunch, and
Oh,
then
yeah, that'll be good.
I think I'm
retro
also gonna
mention.
have tickets to the Springfield Symphony, and then maybe like one or two other things.
Nice.
Yeah, something.
Evidently, you can still text to win tickets to see Seinfeld. This must be the last day, right?
It has to be.
Because the event is
It's
Saturday. And I think these are physical tickets because Houston, I was texting him, or no, I emailed him yesterday a question about this, and he said he was going to go by and pick them up today. So that means that they must be physical tickets. To register for a pair of tickets to see Seinfeld, at Juanita K this Saturday, text the word Seinfeld, SEINFELD, to the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 417-447-5743. And I imagine that will end at some point today, and you'll be contacted if you win. And it's my understanding you will need to pick those tickets up tomorrow here at the station. But if we find out that it's something different than that, you'll be contacted and you'll know what that is. There is, not surprisingly, a mischaracterization about a conversation that's going on regarding what to do with the money that has been found, Doge money, if you will. And a lot of the headlines are, I saw one, I think it was Fox News, Elon Musk weighing $5,000 checks to taxpayer for Doge. No, that's not accurate. There's a lot of, and some of this is headline, some of it's clickbait, some of it is disinformation. Now, there's a line of truth in there, but I want to just get you filled in on exactly what it is that this very shoddy reporting is regarding that potential $5,000 check that taxpayers would get from the found Doge money.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 15 and wind chill values as low as -20. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around -2. For your Friday, mostly sunny skies with a high near 29. And for your Saturday, sunny with a high near 38.
It's these Doge headlines. Here's one. Doge caught in controversy. $38.4 billion of its saved money is missing. Now we care about missing money. The media has gotten to the point where a lot of these stories, I don't even bother reading anymore because you just know they're not true or they're taken out of context. We know, obviously, that the quality of what one would call just media, good media, informative media has been so degraded. It's virtually non-existent in this country. But when it gets to the point that you just don't even bother reading story, you're like, oh, gee, the media and an anti-Doge story. And virtually every single story you read is just based off of hysterical fear-mongering with nothing to back it up whatsoever. I mean, for a media that loves to say without evidence, you have these wild claims that get made about Elon Musk, he's stealing your money. Elon Musk is going to take your Social Security. These are members of Congress saying this stuff. And no fact-checking is necessary. There's no qualifier in the news stories about how there's no evidence provided with these allegations. They're just allowed to make these allegations, and then they're presented as if they're true. I saw one headline. It was Fox News, and it was along the lines of Elon or Musk weighing the idea of $5,000 rebate checks to taxpayers because of Doge. Now, that is not at all what's going on. There's a CEO of an investment firm named Azoria is the name of the investment firm. James Fishback is the CEO. And he had posted on social media, I'm guessing it was X, a recommendation, an idea, several paragraphs long, that ultimately argued that it would be in the best interest of the country to give $5,000 to people who pay taxes. The number he came up with was like 79 million Americans that actually pay federal taxes, and to give them $5,000 of this, and for a number of different reasons, not just because, hey, these are taxpayer dollars, but also that it would go a long way in sort of allowing the government to get some credibility back, that, hey, this is your money, we recognize it, so here you're going to have it, and so forth. And this was, put up as, a message, and I don't know if it was directly to Elon Musk, but Elon Musk replied to it, I'll check with the president, or I'll see what the president thinks, something like that. That was his response to it. Now, that is not Elon Musk weighing whether or not we're going to get $5,000. That is Elon Musk responding to this novel idea, which I think it's a great idea to talk about, to have a discussion about, and saying, hey, I'll pass this along. This insistency, and that was Fox News with that misleading headline. Some of it, I think, is laziness. Some of it, I think, they get in their own narrative, like, oh, well, this is Elon Musk's thing, and since he responded, that means that he's the one making the decision. Like, use your brains. That's not how any of this works. It's just, some people may see it as nitpicking, but to me, this stuff matters. Details matter. Details that matter. I can see arguments on both. My instinct on this idea is that as much as I love the idea of getting some of my tax dollars back, I don't know that this is a good idea. And it's not gone anywhere, best I can tell at this point, beyond Elon Musk saying, I'll pass this along to Trump, see what he thinks. We're in, obviously, we know this very dangerous economic situation right now in which we are getting to a point of no return. And that, to me, is the four-alarm fire that needs to be focused on. I think of it like this. If you are in horrific debt, awful debt, you're drowning, your paycheck is just barely covering the interest on what you owe. And it's at the point, if something doesn't change in your spending habits, you're just going to go under. I mean, it's over for you financially. And you decide, man, I need to get this thing fixed. So you go to some financial whiz. You get to sit down with somebody like Dave Ramsey. And, of course, what's going to happen, you're going to look at, okay, how much money do you have in? How much money do you have going out? All right, these are the things you don't need. I mean, Trump is essentially on this, and Elon Musk, this Dave Ramsey plan of sorts. Okay, what do we not need? And then, all right, now we have all this debt. So what do you do with the debt? Now, let's say that in this scenario, your Aunt Bertha passes away and leaves you $5,000. What do you think Dave Ramsey would tell you to do with that money? Would he tell you just to go out and spend it? Or would he tell you use that to pay off some stuff? That immediately goes straight to pay off your lowest credit card debt. Obviously, it's the latter of the two. To me, that is somewhat of a similar situation here that we are looking at when it comes to, okay, this theoretical, the money that's found and the savings and so forth. Should we take that and go out and spend it? In other words, should that be given to us as taxpayers, the ones who actually pay taxes, or should we use it to pay down the debt? Like ultimately the whole reason that this is being done, it's to stave off that economic catastrophe. I also do worry about the inflationary aspect of it. If we all of a sudden are pumping all that money into the economy, are we going to, and I suspect that this is what Trump is going to be told by economic advisors, that is not going to help any sort of inflation situation. And while it is, the argument, and there's truth to this, that if it's earned money, that is good for an economy. But if it's, quote, printed money, that is not. That's what waters down the value of the dollar. And the argument for giving that money back to the taxpayer, I say back to the taxpayer, and say, well, that is my money, that is my earned money. Well, it's not really. It's money that your great-grandkids are going to earn one day, because we're borrowing so far into the future that it really is it's printed money that's been spent, or that is in line to be spent. And so turning around and giving that to the taxpayers, that's just like us spending future money that has been taken from our great-grandkids. And I just don't, to me, it does not, when we understand what the goal is, seem like the best idea. And it's a one-time thing. Use that to, quote, pay off the debt, or, it's going to be part of this all-encompassing formula, obviously, and just give people, as Trump plans to do, tax cuts. I mean, that is long-term, plus just in terms of the mindset and planning for the future and industries that are looking at not tomorrow, but 5 years from now and 10 years from now, there's a much different understanding of what is going to happen and anticipation of what's going to happen if everyone has long-term more of their own money versus getting a one-time shot of $5,000. I think it's just best overall for the economy. It's best for, I guess that's just in a nutshell. I believe that is just the best thing to do economically speaking. But we'll see. I almost hate that this idea has gotten out there because I think that the populism component to this is going to make it something that a lot of people will want to occur. And a lot of even Trump supporters, and I don't think anybody's an idiot for thinking, yeah, I should get that money back. I just don't believe that that is the wisest thing to do. And we need to be disciplined. We're in a hole because that hole is our hole that somebody else dug for us. And when you're in a hole financially and you get yourself a little shot of money, you have an option. All right, do I use this to embark on that corrected path forward and put it towards this responsible thing, or do I just go out and spend it? Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. I love this headline. The things that the brilliant minds will toil over to figure out that common folk just know instinctively. Yale study. New York Times coverage of war in Israel has been pro-Hamas. No, you don't say. This has the same feel of 3 years after the initial hysteria over COVID. Study finds that maybe being 6 feet apart doesn't really have any scientific basis to it. Like, oh, really? Yeah, you mean what us common hillbilly folk have been noting from the beginning just by saying, wait, this doesn't make sense. Can you explain this? Well, you're just anti-science. No, I just want a scientific explanation. That's all. New York Times coverage of war in Israel has been pro-Hamas. It took a Yale study to figure this one out. The study was published by Edil J. Pinker of the Yale School of Management, titled An Analysis of the New York Times Coverage of the War Between Israel and Hamas, the abstract says. I conduct a quantitative analysis of the text of 1,561 New York Times articles published from October 7th of 2023 to June 7th of 2024 that reference both Israel and Gaza, to assess whether there are imbalances in the coverage that have a potential to influence readers' opinions about the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas in a systemic way. I find that there is a dominant narrative of the war that contextualizes many of the articles. In this narrative, Hamas attacked Israel on October 7, 2023, killing 1,200 Israelis, and Israel's military response has killed X thousand Palestinians, with X increasing over time. Little mention in the coverage is made of Israeli casualties post-October 7th, or Palestinian acts of violence post-October 7th. Even as Israel and Hamas were locked in intensive combat over the 8 months of the study period. In fact, Israel is mentioned more than 3 times as often as Hamas. Personal stories of Palestinian or Lebanese suffering appear an average of 2 out of every 3 days, while it is common to go a week at a time without even a single mention of IDF deaths, even when such deaths were frequent. I argue that the net result of these imbalances and others is to create a depiction of events that is imbalanced towards creating sympathy for the Palestinian side, places most of the agency in the hands of Israel, is often at odds with actual events, and fails to give readers an understanding of how Israelis are experiencing the war. The Jerusalem Post adding that Pinker's study dismisses the argument that the reason Israel appears more the reason that Israel as a term appears more is because the Jewish state has more independence than the Palestinians and thus will have more freedom of action. If this were the case, he argued, there would be less of an imbalance in the ratio of mentions of Hezbollah and Iran. However, the data indicated the imbalance was the same. Furthermore, while personal stories of Palestinian or Lebanese suffering are generally featured on 2 out of 3 days, it's common to go a week at a time without a single mention of IDF deaths, even when such deaths are frequent. The analysis, just the latest study of pro-Hamas bias in mainstream media outlets. And, I laugh of this because some of this is so obvious. And in the beginning, the media portrayed itself as trying to get itself more balanced and not give such sympathy to the terrorist. And there was that one bit of reporting, a burst of reporting in which the terrorist blew up the hospital or the parking garage next to the hospital, and they blamed it on Israel, and the media could not wait to report on that, taking the propaganda from the terrorists, the disinformation from the terrorists, and reporting it to the entire world. And for whatever reason, when they got caught, there was this sort of collective, yes, we goofed up. We're going to really evaluate the way that we do things so that we can provide more honest coverage and not have coverage that is overly sympathetic to terrorism. But they never changed. I don't even frankly know why it was that they had this public declaration of, golly gee, we recognize that we messed up here, because generally they don't care about that. And all the subsequent reporting and coverage of the war in Israel or between Israel and Hamas was just as biased, including the fact that throughout the entirety of this, they always use Hamas's numbers of deaths. Every time they would talk about the number of people killed in Gaza, the number of Palestinians killed, those numbers were coming directly from the terrorists. When you are, without question, utilizing statistics provided to you by the terrorist organization and not even noting oftentimes that that's where you're getting that number, you don't really need a Yale study to determine that the coverage of the battle that is going on in that part of the country, or that part of the world rather, is definitely very pro-terrorist and anti-Semitic. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Part of what I would call it refreshing about Trump's approach to things is just that it is different. That in and of itself. Sometimes I like to watch movies that are foreign, not because I think that they're better or because that somehow makes me sophisticated, but they're just oftentimes different. That sometimes they're not any better, but the storylines and the patterns is really interesting. How if you oftentimes you watch any sort of American film and you can feel when it's about to end. You just know because of the way story arcs are. But oftentimes, if you watch films from other countries, other cultures, their story arcs just are different, and it's just something different. And Trump's way of dealing with things, that in and of itself just makes it, particularly if you enjoy watching these things play out and what do they mean, it's much more engaging. And the comments that the coming out swinging at Zelensky, referring to Zelensky as a dictator, and of course everyone's in a tizzy because we're supposed to, we can't have a nuanced understanding of this battle between Russia and Ukraine. You have to believe that Zelensky may be Jesus. We don't know because he is so perfect and so pure as the driven snow, and Putin is just straight up Satan, and nothing that he says can ever be right whatsoever. It's all 100% one way or the other. There's absolutely no, because there's never in history been two sides that maybe both have some things about them that are wrong, or both of them do have dictatorial personality traits and fight each other. No. Every battle that has ever existed, one is completely good and the other is completely awful. Trump's reason for this is the same reason that everything else that he does or says, because he believes that it is going to help bring this thing to an end. So his positioning here of calling out Zelensky and his calculation, this is something that is going to put pressure on Zelensky to come to the table. That's his number one goal here, is to just get both sides to come to some sort of an agreement to just end this thing. But it, at the same time, is, I think, revealing to a lot of Americans things that they don't know about Zelensky. And I want to talk about that coming up. I'm Nick Reed. KSGF.com. Women's fourth annual KY3 Women's Show at the Ozark Empire Fairgrounds. That is Saturday, March 1st. You can register for your chance to win tickets to that at KSGF.com. You can text to win tickets to see Jerry Seinfeld. He is going to be performing at Juanita K this Saturday. I imagine today will be the last day for your opportunity to text to win for that, obviously, with the event coming up on Saturday. If you want an opportunity to win tickets, get yourself registered by texting the word Seinfeld to the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447-KSGF. That's 417-447-5743, and that will get you registered to potentially win a pair of those tickets. You know, it's amazing to watch our media cover the conflict between Ukraine and Russia in such a propaganda way. And so much of it is by portraying, you know, Trump and the Trump administration of spreading propaganda. Yet the coverage is total propaganda. Now, that doesn't mean that Putin is right and a good guy. But it is so clear, just like the Yale study that showed after a great deal of research that coverage of the Israeli, they focus specifically on the New York Times, but the New York Times coverage of the Israeli Hamas conflict is in line with the rest of the mainstream media, and they found after diligent study that it was very pro-Hamas. Oh, no kidding, really. Who would have thunk? I think most reasonable people that look at coverage, particularly whenever Trump is involved, of what is going on between Russia and Ukraine, it is pro-Ukrainian propaganda. And saying that, I stress, that doesn't mean that Putin is right or that Putin is the good guy, and that, you know, but it's still just so brazen. I mean, you know how you could tell if you just give an article to someone who really doesn't know what's going on and ask them, if you had to guess, which side do you think the person who wrote this article is on? And if they can figure it out, then in all likelihood, we're talking about propaganda here. The way that the people who craft these stories, they see it is it's not propaganda, it's just the truth. Because Trump is horrible and Trump is wrong. We're just reporting that. That's all we're reporting. Instead of, here's what's happening, here's what Trump said, here is what Zelensky says, here is what Putin says, this is what's going on. They have to cast everything in a narrative so that you understand who the good guy is and who the bad guy is. This headline from ABC is a perfect example. Ukraine reels as Trump criticism echoes Russian disinformation campaign. I read through the article. Nowhere do they actually cite what the disinformation is. Nowhere. Now, the latest brouhaha is over Trump referring to Zelensky as a dictator, noting, by the way, this is totally accurate, that Zelensky has not allowed for any elections to take place. And so what the media does is they're like, well, see, that's what Putin says. So clearly Trump is on Putin's side. Whether Putin says it or not doesn't divert from whether or not it's true. That is true. That doesn't have anything to do with whether Putin says it. If Putin did not say it, guess what? Elections are still not occurring in Ukraine. Now, the media, they're trying to make it sound like, oh, Zelensky has absolutely no choice because the Constitution says that there won't be elections if martial law is declared. Well, Zelensky is the one who declared martial law. I mean, so, well, you have no choice. You have to do that if you're at war. Listen, we held presidential elections when we had our own civil war. I mean, we were fighting a war with ourselves. and we still had our presidential elections. And other countries have done the same. They've had elections during wartime, while some have not. But this idea that, what, and this is the propaganda of it. This is the dishonest look at it, acting as if Zelensky has absolutely no choice whatsoever because, of course, he's Jesus and can do no wrong. He has to cancel elections in order to save democracy. If one wants to argue that it's best for him to cancel elections because he may lose, and if he loses, that could throw things off track and that could help Putin. All right, make that argument. But let's not pretend as if noting the fact that he has canceled elections is simply propaganda from Putin, because it's just the truth. If Putin notes that the sun comes up in the morning and goes down at night, if Putin notes that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, is the fact that we recognize that as well mean that we're just puppets of Putin spreading his disinformation? No, it does not. The truth is the truth regardless of who wants to recognize it. The truth is the truth regardless of who respects it, who wants to use it, whether good guys recognize it or bad guys recognize it. The truth is not dictated by whomever is promoting it. It is such a disservice to what is going on between Russia and Ukraine and what Trump is attempting to do along with NATO here to cover it this way. And I'm not saying that just because the media is, of course, they're the ones spreading the disinformation here, that means everything Trump is doing is the perfect way to do it and that it's going to end up perfectly right. Unfortunately, that's where the real conversation should be, is looking at exactly what is happening. Sometimes, frankly, you don't know whether it was the, quote, right approach until you see the outcome. Sometimes we don't know these things. But what we do know is that Trump has a success rate of making things work out to where you're moving forward. And this idea, we've got to get I'm going to get a update on the latest news and weather, but there's just a couple of other things that we just have to understand reality when it comes to this particular situation. And I know many people would say, well, giving Putin anything is a win to Putin. Okay, so then if we take that approach and he gets nothing, then what? What's going to keep going? Is that what we want? And it's going to keep going. It's going to keep going. Do we just keep funding the one side in order to make sure it keeps going and going and going and going? Because at this point, the trajectory that it is on suggests that nothing is going to change in terms of one side winning and the other side surrendering or losing. That is not in the cards at this point. And there's this failure to recognize that. There's this lack of maturity and approach in which we say, well, if Putin gets anything at all he wants, then nope, not going to do it. Okay, well then what does that look like? What does that mean for tomorrow? What does that mean for the next day? It's pretty easy for people who aren't in the conflict to say, no, it has to be absolutely perfect, because we're not the ones who are watching our sons and daughters and mothers and children in some instances getting slaughtered. We're not the ones who are suffering that. So it's real easy to say, nope, it has to be absolutely perfect, just the way that I think it should be. But that's not reality. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 15, but wind chill values as low as -20. Tonight mostly clear with a low around -2. For your Friday, mostly sunny with a high near 29, and for Saturday, sunny skies with a high near 38.
Yeah, it may go without saying at this point, but Christy Fulnecki is not joining us.
She is not.
Yeah, so just for those of you that were inquiring as to whether or not she would be here this morning, she is not. Traffic update. This, public spat that is occurring with Zelensky and Trump, and of course the media is all in for Zelensky all the way. The inconsistencies of the media and the contradictions are so remarkable. Zelensky is a guy that brought an actual Nazi with him to, was it Canadian Parliament, and then they sort of had to apologize for making such a big deal out of it. Yet the people who praise and say Zelensky is somehow infallible want to accuse Elon Musk of being a Nazi because of the, my heart goes out to you thing he did. I mean, it's like when it comes to actual Nazis, they're like, well, that's a little different. Yeah, he was an actual Nazi, but, he didn't really have much choice. Nazis didn't have a lot of choices back then. But then people who are not anywhere close to Nazis or Nazi sympathizers, they will so easily label as Nazis. And dictators themselves. Now, I'm not claiming that Zelensky is a dictator. Trump is here's what you have to understand. Every single thing that Trump is doing right now is for the sole purpose of getting an agreement signed to stop this thing, an agreement that will hold and stick. And in his assessment right now, that is putting public pressure on Zelensky. That is, making Zelensky feel as if, hey, everybody else, you got NATO members that have come together here. You've got the Russians that are coming together. You got everyone, but Zelensky's the guy, and Trump noting that Zelensky's had a seat at the table for 3 years. And while some may disagree with the assessment or the characterization, his goal is to pressure Zelensky to feel the public pressure and to feel isolated so that he comes to the table. Now, you may disagree with that. You may think, well, he shouldn't be made to feel that way. That's fine. But that doesn't alter the reality of why it is that Trump is doing it. His goal isn't to protect anyone's feelings. His goal is not to, make Zelensky, make sure everyone knows that he's the good guy and make sure everyone knows that Putin is the bad guy. His goal is to stop this thing. That's it. Now, will his approach work? That, is another debate. But it helps to understand that's why he is doing what he's doing. And this isn't anything different than the way that he has worked to make things occur before. But I find it also amusing that the media and the Democrats are going apoplectic over Donald Trump characterizing Zelensky as being a dictator because he canceled presidential elections, when we have been told for how long? Certainly in the lead up to the election, that Donald Trump is a dictator. And how did we know that? Well, because he's going to cancel, it'll be the last election we ever have. How many times did we hear that from Democrats? That if Donald Trump gets elected president, that he will refuse to leave office, that there will be no further elections. I mean, you had Democrats out there on the campaign trail. You had Democrats in the media claiming that this would be the last election we ever have. Democracy is at stake. Why? Because if Donald Trump's elected president, we won't have any more elections. He'll cancel them. So these people have told us they, by their own definition, have said somebody who would cancel an election, a presidential election, is a dictator. Now, of course, Trump isn't going to do that. There's no evidence to suggest that he would. But then Zelensky, a guy who has done that by declaring martial law, he's the greatest guy in the world. The greatest defender of freedom we've ever seen. Do you see the contradiction here? I mean, you can't. I suppose you can try to have it both ways, but those two things don't jive. You can't shove down our throats that Trump is a dictator because he'll cancel elections, but then say Zelensky is a great warrior for freedom when he uses martial law to cancel elections. His own specifically. Understanding that, of course, at the same time, doesn't mean that Putin should get parts of Ukraine or that Putin is the good guy here. This is part of the problem. See, you can have two people that are flawed, maybe that are even straight up bad, that have authoritarian perspectives, or one that has a little, one that has a lot. But what they do is, whether what they're doing is the right thing or the wrong thing, is not determined based off how nice of a guy the individuals are. Do you know what I'm saying? Those are separate things. And so what has happened here is there has been this declaration that Putin is evil. Zelensky is a warrior of freedom. So that means everything Zelensky wants is good. Everything that Zelensky desires is good. Every belief he has about how this thing should be approached is good. Well, that's simply putting the eggs in the basket of the team that we decide we're going to support. and then suspending all critical thinking and analysis, suspending, all thought and opinion. And that's not what smart people do. But I just, this whole, and I don't know if Trump will ever mention this, but how is he a dictator when he supposedly was going to cancel elections? Zelensky, who does through martial law, is the greatest freedom fighter we've ever seen. Which one is it? That unfortunately is a contradiction we have with a completely immoral and dishonest media that is, when it comes to covering this particular conflict, acts as a propaganda wing for whatever it is Zelensky wants. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. This is a perfect example, by way of a text message, of the problem I'm talking about. You're so far in on supporting Trump, no matter what he does, you ignore the fact that he blamed Ukraine for starting the war. No matter what Trump says, you'll come up with some stupid excuse on why he's right every time. You're better than that, Nick. Now, how many times did I say in this segment, it doesn't mean that Trump's right? You may agree with his approach, you may not agree with his approach. Here's his motivation. This is his goal. This is why he's doing it. I noted the fact that sometimes you don't even know whether it's the right move or not until it's over. And then if it works, you're like, yep, that was the right move. If it doesn't, nope, that was the wrong move. The problem with situations like this is you have this perspective that he even, you look at it and you try to evaluate, you take the personalities out of it. You take the, quote, sides out of it, and you look at it from an analytical standpoint and say, what is the goal? If this happens, what is going to be the result? And then, well, Trump, whatever Trump does is bad. It's just, this is how we end up in these never-ending conflicts, suspending all intellectual thought and refusing to look at the reality as to what is going on. There is only one person right now that is leading an effort to stop this. You notice in the years that this has been going on, all the money that was funded to them, never from the previous administration was there an explanation as to how this was supposed to end. Never. What was the end supposed to look like? Even if it wasn't achievable, that would have been nice to say, well, once Putin is out of the Crimean Peninsula and all these other areas, that is what the end goal is. There was never any of that. We were never told what the end was because there wasn't one. Like I said, it's so easy when you're on the other side of the world and it's not your, family members that are being put in harm's way. It's not your kids or brothers or sisters or husbands that are being sent off into battle to be like, nope, just keep funding it. Just let them keep going. I don't care if there's an end in sight. It's real easy to do that. I mean, I would have settled for just a goal. Well, the goal is for Zelensky to win. But define that. What does that mean? You have to have definitions for something to end, and that's what, again, whether it is a good or not good, whomever is seen as coming out ahead, that's what Trump is working towards. Is here. This is what the end looks like. Do you agree to it? Okay. Do you agree to it? Finding something that both sides will agree to. I've never, it's just remarkable. I guess we found the answer to how is it you turned people on the left who have long claimed that they're against these nonstop wars and the industrial military complex. How do you get them to support a never-ending war? Well, just have Trump try to put an end to it. Then they're on board for it. Let's just keep doing what we're doing. Not our kids' bodies. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 104.1, your first alert forecast from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 15 and wind chill values as low as -20. Tonight mostly clear with a low around -2. For your Friday, mostly sunny skies with a high near 29, and on Saturday, sunny with a high near 38.
I don't know if some of this, I think obviously with age, there's some people that just never learn from history and things that occur. They never see patterns. They don't pay attention to them. Then, there are those that do. And I've just noticed something, that when it comes to different wars, or I guess we should say conflicts, because we haven't actually had a declared war since World War II. Everything since then, all these other wars have never been officially declared. But those that we look at that have just drawn on, and we look at them as, well, that was a waste of time. None of them really had a stated goal. There was no one that really put forward this actual attempt to end it. Now, there are exceptions. The Gulf War. I'm not talking about post 9/11, but Saddam Hussein with Kuwait and the coalition of the entire world coming together. And then there was a point in which, okay, we're going to get together in this tent. Norman Schwarzkopf was there, and you had, Saddam's people there, and they all get in this tent, and they sign this agreement, this ceasefire agreement, which, of course, was never, it wasn't an end to things, but it was something that identified this is what this looks like. End of World War II, signed on, the USS Missouri, a similar sort of situation. This is what it is going to look like. This is how this ends. Now, in that particular instance, World War II, you had one side with Japan that's like, okay, we give, uncle, okay, well, you just tell us what we're going to do. But even at that, you've got this this understanding that in order for something to stop, there has to be a stated, identifiable, achievable goal. And it's not just in war, that's in anything in life. Anything. If you have, if you want to make it somewhere, if you are working towards financial wealth, you have to have a plan. If you are starting a business and you are wanting it to succeed, you have to have a plan. You have to have goals. And then, you revisit those goals. Are we on path? We do it here. We've got all these different goals in a number of different areas, and here's what we're hoping to achieve. And at some point you revisit, are we on track? We are. If you're not, you can readjust and so forth. So many of these military conflicts that aren't, it's not just involvement of the United States, but other countries, it's just like, well, to win. Well, okay, yeah, but what does that look like? Think about if you're gonna, can you imagine? Hey, we'll start a new sport. All right, here we got 24 people, 12 people here, 12 people there, and all right, go. And you have 30 minutes to win. Well, but how do we win? Well, we're not going to tell you that. Well, then you don't win. There's no winning. You have to have that stated goal, and this is something Trump understands as a business person, that those are things that just have to exist. And Vietnam or so many of these other conflicts, again, not those just involving the United States, just sort of float through them day to day. Day to day. Oh, what do you need today? Oh, you need more money? You need more missiles? Okay. Yeah, what else? Okay, wake up, new day, more people killed. All right, well, let's just, keep going. Oh, no end in sight? That's all right. What do you need? We'll just keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. You can really understand how it is that so many of these conflicts just go on and on and on and on. Because the people involved and the people in charge never identify an end game, an end goal. And frankly, you can see why. The fact that Trump is being attacked isn't only because he's Trump. Anyone who would make these, because it's like any sort of compromise, no one is going to be fully happy. No one is going to be. And the only way that you have two sides in a conflict in which both sides are going to have a little unhappiness is if you have an individual or an entity that crafts a scenario and convinces them this is the best way out for both of you. And that's what Trump is trying to do. And it ultimately will depend on Zelensky, and it will depend on Putin as to whether or not that they decide to do that. People who hate Trump, you can rest assured this one thing, and that is that ultimately it's something that Zelensky and Putin both have to agree to. They're the ones who have to put their signature down there. Coming up, I want to play some audio. The CEO of, let's see here, the CEO of Delta was on with Gayle King. And the Trump derangement syndrome, of course, is in play here. The Delta airline, this is the plane that crashed in Canada, but of course, somehow it's Donald Trump's fault. And I want to play the audio of the CEO of Delta in which he was asked, well, now, we know this was in Canada and everything, but, I mean, clearly, what Trump's doing, right? I mean, this must concern you. This crash, I mean, we're just going to see more of this stuff. His answer is, not the correct one, of course, but it's one that is based in reality. That next, I'm Nick Reed. The only thing worse than no communication is bad communication.
Oh, I agree.
I mentioned this morning, it was about 2:30, our power went out, and as did apparently around 1,600 people. I think that I saw where the problem was as I was heading in early this morning because of the work crew that was there, and I remember just even laying in bed thinking, man, can you imagine getting that call? It's like the coldest time that it has been, and Lord knows how long, and you got to get out and do that. Did not envy those people at all. And I had mentioned, off air, I was telling Sarah that, I had signed up to get text messages from Liberty Utilities in case there's an outage, and I didn't. I knew that we had one because I have an automated lighting system, and the power was going off and on and off and on for a while, and my system, whenever it is from off to on, the lights flash to let you know that they are activated. It's an automated system, and so they just kept doing that throughout the house, starting at 2:30 this morning. You can imagine and it happened for like an hour. This was going on. I just got a text message, important message. There's an outage in your area. Estimated restoration time is currently 6:50 a.m. I got this at 7:40.
You're time traveling.
I mean, it's just it is worse than not addressing it at all, because you're like,
well, I'm taking it that it's still out, and that is why you received that message.
Yeah,
Ugh.
I suppose so. It reminds me of the messaging of the Biden administration that the economy was fine, and it's just like, no, don't tell. You're better off saying nothing at all, as opposed to telling me something that indicates that you are incompetent. I appreciate, at least, I suppose, that there's an effort, but that is a bit aggravating. Delta CEO is on with, this is Gail King, CBS Morning. And as you know, as absurd as it is, the plane that crashed in Canada somehow is Donald Trump's fault. Chuck Schumer has said it. The media is trying to, draw a connection to it. I mean, it's just absurd. I don't care how many hiring freezes are in place. A plane that apparently we have yet to see, either it was a hard landing that caused those landing gears to potentially buckle. It just sort of looks like that's what happened. Or if they buckled, it didn't look like that hard of a landing, but the idea that a hiring freeze of federal employees, of non-safety and non-air traffic control people, is somehow connected to this is absolutely absurd. And so once that absurdity becomes so clear, then they shift it to, yeah, but given what has happened, doesn't this give you concern about the things that Trump is doing? And so, of course, here's the CEO of Delta Airlines on, and what they want desperately is for him to say, yes, Donald Trump is going to make air flight so much more dangerous.
The Trump administration recently fired many employees of the FAA administration. Do those cuts worry you, and do you think that impacts the safety? I know you just said it's the safest way to travel, but after looking at all these mishaps, a lot of people are very nervous. Do these cuts affect you?
The cuts do not affect us, Gail. I've been in close communication with the Secretary of Transportation. I understand that the cuts at this time are something that are raising questions, but the reality is there's over 50,000 people that work at the FAA, and the cuts, I understand, were 300 people, and they were in non-critical safety functions. The Trump administration has committed to investing deeply in terms of improving the overall technologies that are used in the air traffic control systems and modernizing the skies. They've committed to hiring additional controllers and investigators and safety investigators. So, no, I'm not concerned with that at all.
Now, in that 40-second response, the CEO of Delta gave more straightforward, valuable, informative information about what is going on than we have received in the media in totality covering all of this. I'm not talking just about that flight, but all of with the FAA and hiring freezes and the cutting of staff. In that 40-second response, number one, we learned, and this is so novel, that the Secretary of Transportation has been in direct contact with him This is much different than the world of Pete Buttigieg, in which no one ever knew where he was. We learn that of the individuals that have been cut from their jobs, there are 300 of them out of 50,000. 50,000. 50,000. Did you know those numbers? Does the media make sure that you have that context when they talk about these jobs being cut? Of course they don't. He, in that 40 seconds, mentioned that the jobs that were cut were jobs that had absolutely nothing to do with safety or security whatsoever. Well, that's sort of relevant, don't you think? In that 40 seconds, in addition to all of that contextual information, he mentions that what is occurring under the Trump administration is this, amazingly, for the first time in modern history, focus on modernizing things, getting them out of the Stone Age with some of the technology so that flying can actually be safer. Lo and behold. Now, Delta, incidentally, though I don't know this CEO's particular background, but one of the cultural, I don't want to say backlash, but Delta has been the target of a lot of discussion online because of, their DEI stuff. And so the way that the company has focused on some of the DEI stuff suggests that it's probably not run by a bunch of right-wing Trump supporters. So that in 40 seconds here, you have CBS Morning co-anchor Gayle King that wants this all to be about Donald Trump. And if that's what, as a viewer of that program, that if she is all that you are listening to, or you're getting their perspective, that's what you learn about what's going on, not what is actually going on. And the fact that in 40 seconds, if you listen to what that CEO of Delta says, he gives... that guy should be a reporter or a journalist because he clearly understands what's important and relevant. So as opposed to this is Trump's fault because he is carelessly firing people because he's a madman, there have been 300 people let go out of 50,000. None of them had anything to do with safety or security. And the focus of this administration is, for the first time in modern history, actually upgrading and getting the industry up to date so that it can be the safest possible. What a horrible thing. Now, do you think that's going to change the way that CBS looks at or covers or presents information about this? Hell no. They're still going to, every single time they can, draw this to Donald Trump. Forget what he said. I mean, that guy, he clearly didn't get the assignment, did he? Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, winter, it can be pretty brutal on your roof. Whether you've noticed a more shiny texture on your shingles or kind of those more obvious issues, like your home just feels draftier than normal, or maybe you've got yellowing on your ceiling, it may be time for a roof inspection. And that is why I want to recommend my friends over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, the Pyramid team, they know that getting a new roof is not necessarily considered a fun home purchase, if you will. So they really do try to make that process as simple as possible. They do those free roof inspections for you. They take tons of photos and videos to show you exactly what they see, and then they work with you for the best solution for you and your home. Sometimes that doesn't mean a whole new roof, maybe just a simple roof repair. Either way, the Pyramid Roofing Company team, they've got you covered. So if it is time to schedule that free roof inspection, go ahead and give Josh and his team a call today. You can find all of that contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
KY3 had a story posted, fired FAA employee, I'm scared to death, and the American public should be scared too. A federal aviator, we're going to get all these the world's going to come to an end now. Like, Trump is getting rid of the most sacred, valuable people that are masterminds of our national security. A Federal Aviation Administration employee was let go as part of the massive federal layoffs. Massive. Again, as the CEO of Delta just relayed yesterday on with Carol King, of the 50,000 employees, 300 were let go. Evidently, that is massive, according to this particular story. In an interview with CNN, former FAA employee Charles Spritzer Stadlader said that he was working on a missile defense program when he was fired from the FAA on Friday, saying, I do think that the American public does need to be concerned about, not only my firing, but also the firing of so many public safety and national security professionals at the FAA. Again, the 300 of the 50,000, all that were exempt from any firings or even hiring freezes were those specifically dealing with public safety and national security. Spitzer Statlader said that while he can't talk about what it was that he actually did or the program that he was working on, he wants us to just trust him. He pinky swears it was, quote, incredibly important to his national security role. I noticed that throughout this story, they never note that without evidence. They get this random fired employee who lost his job, and clearly nobody who loses their job is going to be happy about it, who claims without evidence that he is instrumental to our national security, and he and others who are instrumental to our national security have been carelessly fired, and no evidence is needed. Doesn't have to provide, even as background, any sort of evidence that he actually did these jobs. Let's just put him on air. Why? Because it gives us a chance to report on how dangerous Donald Trump is. There's a story about a report, Trump about to fire thousands of IRS agents. Most of us, because of the size of government, know people who work in government. I mean, I know this is going to sound like a cliche, but literally some of my best friends work in government. Not as elected officials, but as employees of the government. And I think that there is a difference between recognizing that, particularly in certain areas of government, that, yes, it is too big, and some of it is redundant, and some of it is wasteful, and recognizing it needs to go, but you could still feel empathy for the people who lose their jobs. It's not like many of these people did anything wrong by getting these jobs. It was a job, oftentimes with good pay and great benefits. And, the approach of the left on this is to share these individual stories so that you feel bad for them, and that is supposed to translate into your position on policy for the United States of America and the size of government. But the point is here, you can feel bad for individuals who are losing their jobs. That doesn't mean all of a sudden you believe that we shouldn't have any cuts. We should continue to spend just as much as we do. The size of government needs to stay exactly that it was. You can live in both worlds at the same time. You can recognize, hey, this is stuff that does need to happen. And at the same time, recognize that, yeah, there are, if you want to call them victims in all of this, people who lose their jobs, yeah, that exists too. But that's not the role of government, frankly. The role of government is not to create jobs for people. We've got Author of the Week coming up in the next hour. Streaming live, ksgf.com tomorrow, Friday already. We will be broadcasting live from Scramblers if you want to come out and join us for the Friday Roadshow News in 60 seconds. I want a great homeloan.com. If you got home loan needs, you got the characters and their team, and the portal to get straight directly to the Springfield-based team is at iwantagreathomeloan.com. Refinancing, home loan, reverse mortgage. Maybe you go through your bank you have ever since I can remember. Ever since I was a little boy and had that child account there, I've gotten my loans through such and such bank or such and such credit union. Listen. People do different things differently, and sometimes they do the same thing differently. In home loans, you go to one place, you may get different terms and agreements, different timelines. You may get different customer service levels from different places. So even if you already know where you're going to go, and maybe you've already gone through the process and you haven't signed anything, but you know what your terms are going to be, you know what your rates are going to be, you know all of that information, get a second opinion. No downside to that whatsoever. And that second opinion, if you've already gotten the first, is at iwantagreathomeloan.com, because you do. There was a piece in the New York Times regarding a Yale study that apparently only the minds that occupy such spaces as Yale could determine that coverage, media coverage, specifically the New York Times, of the conflict, the war between Hamas and Israel, was just a little bit biased towards the terrorist side. And if you don't know any better, you'd think at the very least that these sides are morally equivalent to one another. It's easy if you listen to many Democrats, with the exception of John Fetterman, and the media, and certainly on college campuses, it's all the fault of the Jews, that the people of Gaza, the Palestinians, they are compassionate people, and they don't want bloodshed. No, they don't want that at all. They're simply doing what they have to. It's in self-defense. They abhor death and bloodshed. With that in mind, I want to read to you the following about the release of some of the hostages that are corpses, a mother and two small children amongst them. Videos of this scene in Gaza, of the handover, painted a grim picture with members of Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, which we're told these are the moderates, Palestinian Authority, parading around coffins with the Bibas or Bibas, B-I-B-A-S is the family name, Bibas family, with the baby pictures on them. In response, a massive crowd of Palestinians cheered and danced as music was blasted to celebrate the death of, among others, the babies. For stagecraft, the terrorists put up a giant billboard with a picture of the entire family encased in blood. They then had the Red Cross, which was more than willing to play along with the propaganda, sign for the bodies in a depraved ceremony. This is who these people are. These people don't abhor violence. These people don't want peace. They drink violence. They survive off of violence. These people are psychopaths. To use the exchange of or the transfer of the bodies of babies that you killed as a like a Super Bowl celebration. These are the people that the previous administration continually sided with. These are the people that some members of Congress and the media tell us that we should be sympathetic towards. These people are sick and they're demonic. And it's not like they hide it. But they don't have to when you have, particularly in this country, left-wing organizations and some left-wing politicians covering it up for them. Springfield's Talk 104.1, latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 15 and wind chill values as low as -20. Tonight mostly clear with a low around -2. For your Friday, mostly sunny skies with a high near 29. And for your Saturday, sunny with a high near 38.
I am Nick Reed, and it is time for Author of the Week, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. We have L.A. Marzulli, author of Rungs of Disclosure, Following the Trail of Extraterrestrials in the End Times. Not subject matter that we talk about a lot, though we have in certain capacities. You know, our congressmen in the 7th Congressional District, which is where Springfield is housed, is Congressman Burleson, and he's been on, or at least one of those committees when recently there were discussions and I don't know if you'd call them whistleblowers, but revelations about UFOs and so forth. So it is subject matter that we do talk about periodically. I appreciate you being with us this morning, and I know you've written a number of different books, not just UFOs, but ancient prophetic texts and all sorts of different researches that involve religion and the church and so forth. If you would, tell people just a bit about your background before we get into the book.
Yeah, I'm an author, filmmaker. I've hosted and directed, produced 30 films. We're working on 31, which is about the Shroud of Turin and the Holy Fire. I'm the author of 14 books. A lot of them deal with On the Trail of a Nephilim, the biblical account of the giants, and of course, the whole UFO phenomena, which I have come to call the coming great deception.
I know we're talking about the book regarding the extraterrestrials, but the Nephilim, if you would, because I think a lot of our listeners may not be familiar with what that is. Can you briefly describe it? Because I find it very interesting.
Yeah, briefly, you know, Genesis 3:15 is not taught in the churches, and yet it's there in the biblical prophetic narrative. Adam and Eve have just done the unthinkable. They've sided with the dragon, i.e. Satan. They are terrified, which is why they're hiding from the Lord. They realize they're naked and ashamed. That's the first time. And so the pre-incarnate Christ is there. And he says this to the dragon, your offspring your seed, your offspring, your seed will be at war and enmity with the offspring of the woman. The one coming from the woman, the proto-evangelium, the Messiah, will crush your head. That's the entire Bible. That is the gateway to the biblical narrative. 3 chapters later, we get the seed war manifesting, where the sons of God, the B'nai Ha-Elohim, which always refers to the angelic host, it's not the godly line of Seth and the Hoochie Mamas of Cain. That's not what we're looking at. It is definitely the seed of the dragon. This is the reason for the flood. And Noah is pure in all his generations. There it is. It's a vetting process. But if a person doesn't know Genesis 3:15, if a pastor comes through seminary and learns what's called the Sethite theory, he doesn't understand what the Nephilim are. And the Nephilim are the progeny, the offspring of fallen angels and human women, creating a hybrid being known as the Nephilim. It was global. And that's the nexus of my research.
So this book that we're talking about this morning, Rungs of Disclosure, Following the Trail of Extraterrestrials in the End Times, over the last couple of years, these conversations have become more mainstream. And it's interesting because there almost seems to be, I don't want to say a total indifference, there's a curiosity, but there isn't some sort of massive panic that I think many people believed would occur if the government began indicating, yes, we believe that there could be something out there as well. I don't know that it's for a lack of belief as much as just, I don't know, maybe people have gotten very accustomed to the idea. But what I've enjoyed about the fact that the discussions are mainstream is the conversations about who they are. For the longest time, people think aliens from far, far away. But in the discussions over the last couple of years, it seems as if there's been more acknowledgement that perhaps we're dealing with interdimensional creatures or biblical creatures, or maybe all of those combined, or even something else. Of course, it's a huge question, but in your assessment, who are they?
Well, I've been a Christian ufologist basically for decades. I mean, I've seen 3. I don't go looking for these things, folks, but I have seen 3 UFOs. One of them fairly close when I was 12 years old at Camp Horseshoe, Rising Sun, Maryland. But I digress. The bottom line is, and we have 10 films on the UFO phenomena. Number 4 is on the abduction phenomena, and the abductions. It's very chilling, it's very upsetting, it's very visceral. And we have 4 people, 2 women, 2 men, all whom have been abducted from usually a very early age, 5 or 6 years old. These are not friendly, space brothers from some faraway planet. Sperm is taken from the men, ovum is taken from the women. Sometimes women find themselves pregnated or pregnant. And in fact, where was it with on one of the rungs of disclosure here? Yeah, it's the 12th rung, Fox Nation show, alien abduction. This was Brett Baer. You can't get a more stand-up, straight-ahead guy than Brett Baer on Fox News. And the headline was this, and this is one of the rungs of disclosure. Some women who are taken aboard UFOs find themselves pregnant. Well, that's the centerpiece, the tentpole to our 4th film on the UFO phenomena. And this goes back into the biblical narrative, the seed war. This is why Genesis 3:15 is absolutely paramount in our understanding of the rest of the biblical narrative. I'll give you a punchline here. Daniel 2:43. The angel tells Daniel that their seed will mingle with the seed of men. Whose seed? Who are they? Their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but there will be no marriage between them. They will not cleave to them. The word cleave is the same word we get in a marriage contract between a man and a woman. A man will leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. That's exactly what we see. And then the same angel tells Daniel, this is what it's going to look like when this happens. Seal up the words in the book. Men and women will run to and fro over the face of the earth. Knowledge will increase. Well, that's where we are. That's where we are in the modern era. As we are speaking, Nick, men and women are running to and fro over the face of the earth, and knowledge increases exponentially. Jesus warns us it'll be like the days of Noah. So, I mean, I've got 15 minutes with you to talk about something that's very, very deep, very dark, very disturbing, but definitely ties in with the biblical prophetic narrative.
We are talking with L.A. Marzulli. He is the author of Rungs of Disclosure, Following the Trail of Extraterrestrials in the End Times. So what is it that they're looking for? What is the purpose of their exploration, their visit, however you'd characterize it?
I asked that question to Chuck Missler about 15, 20 years ago. Chuck looked right at me without skipping a beat. Said, Satan's outnumbered 2-1. He's building an army. That's exactly what we see happening. Think about this, Nick. 1945, you get Nagasaki and Hiroshima. 1947, you get the Roswell crash. And the disc crashes near Roswell, New Mexico. In Roswell, New Mexico in 1947, the 509th Bombing Group, which is the same bombing group that dropped the 2 atom bombs, one in Hiroshima, one in Nagasaki, are stationed there. 1948, Israel comes back into the land after 2,000 years of diaspora, almost 2,000 years. This starts the end time prophetic clock ticking. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And the plane, the whole UFO phenomena takes off right after that. We get the abductions, we get the crop circles, we get lights in the sky, we get the flybys. I mean, all of it really takes off because it's their time, and they know it's their time.
The movie Signs, which is an M. Night Shyamalan movie,
Yeah.
was on some time ago, and
Mhm.
I was watching it with my daughter, and she wasn't familiar with crop circles because it seemed like there was a period of time, and I was always fascinated with this stuff when I was in middle school and junior high. I don't know why. Anytime we had a report to do, I'd go to the library and I'd get as many books as possible. And crop circles were such a big thing then. And I was explaining to her, yeah, you don't really hear much about those any longer. Is that just one or many signs, if you will, that once upon a time we saw more of, or why do we not seem to see those things as much any longer?
Well, they're still there. I subscribe to a site which basically gives me all the crop circles that are created. We actually have a film on the whole crop circle phenomena. But what we drilled in on, and we were over in England and we filmed over there at the Crop Circle Museum. But there was a crop circle, this ties back into our work on the trail of the Nephilim, in a place called Chillicothe, Ohio, where the Nephilim mounds were. And you remember, during this time, about 20 days after this crop circle appeared, you had, for the first time in thousands of years, a group of Christian men coming up with an alternative explanation as to who built these mounds. It's Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology, Gary Stearman, Russ Dizdar, Chief Joseph Rivelin, and of course yours truly, L.A. Marzulli. And the reason why we did this one particular crop circle, Nick, you can't make a crop circle in a field of standing corn that's 8 feet tall. You can't, it's not like a field of wheat or rapeseed where, you know, the wheat's up to your knees or whatever, and you can plant a stick and then a string and you can make the circle and all this other stuff. You can't do that. You can't even see where you are without a ladder. And we show this in the film. It was the second largest crop circle in the United States, right across from the Nephilim mounds. And in our opinion, the same guys who made the mounds made that crop circle.
So what is the end game, if you will? You mentioned the reference Satan building an army. What are we looking at here?
Well, you're looking at the coming great deception. The entire planet runs on Darwinism. I mean, let's face it. The Darwinian paradigm is sacrosanct in both the academic and the scientific communities. And so the neo-Darwinists are looking at the old Darwinian theory with the discovery of the deoxyribonucleic double helix of life, DNA molecular structure, and they realize that, wait a minute, this thing just didn't happen by itself. Somebody somewhere created it. The question is, who is? So they're looking, the neo-Darwinists are looking out there, panspermia, the idea that we were seeded here by an advanced race of extraterrestrials. When they show up, and if you want to see what I'm talking about, go to YouTube and Google Hello Down There. That was a Super Bowl commercial 2024 to blow your mind. It's predictive programming. But when they return, and it will happen after some sort of a cataclysmic event on the planet, that's conjecture on my part. These so-called space brothers will say this: we created all life on this planet. We genetically manipulated early man. We started the world's civilizations. We started the world's religions. Now at this critical juncture in human history, we are back to usher mankind into a golden age. Nick, I heard this 50 years ago when I was in the New Age myself. I've been a Christian 44 years. Do the math. And so what I'm saying is this is absolutely the coming great deception. This is how you create a one world government and a one world religious system. This is how it's going to be done, in my opinion.
So, what, if anything, should people do to
Well,
prepare,
I mean,
or is there preparation?
there is and there isn't. We need to know what is coming down. And that's the whole purpose of the book, to show that the analogy is the rungs of a ladder, up and up and up. Yeah, we're on the 17th rung, and it's actually more like the 18th, and it just keeps going up until full disclosure. The bottom line, the church is very anemic for the most part and is asleep and isn't aware that about a third of their congregation has seen something, has had an encounter with something. Oftentimes it leaves these people alone, scared, terrified, and afraid to talk to anybody because of the ridicule. The whole purpose of the book is to get people talking and to understand. Look, I'm not making this up. Jesus says they'll be like the days of Noah. So what differentiates the days of Noah? Why does Jesus point to the days of Noah? Out of the entire Old Testament he could point to, he points to that. There's your mixing of the seed right there. This is why Genesis 3:15 is paramount to our understanding of the entire biblical prophetic narrative. It's coming down. There are hundreds, thousands, millions of people who will embrace the lie. In the 2 Thessalonians, God says them strong delusions because they did not believe the truth. What's the truth? That Jesus created everything. Out of his mouth, everything, and he holds all things together. So for the most part, we have abandoned that, and we've embraced the Darwinian evolution paradigm. And the whole purpose of the book, first of all, is to explain what is going on with all the different facets of the phenomena. Close encounters of the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth kind, full contact, crop circles, alien abductions, cattle mutilations, what happened at Roswell. I mean, the book is basically a culmination of decades and decades of research. It will arm the reader, which is the whole purpose of it, to what is the truth.
Then my final question for our author, L.A. Marzulli, the book Rungs of Disclosure, Following the Trail of Extraterrestrials in the End Times. Is there, based off of your look back at how you feel this is exposed or shown itself, are you able to ballpark a time frame when you believe that this is going to either accelerate or when people will begin to notice the undeniable truths of this?
Well, I mean, it already has accelerated. You mentioned the whistleblowers in Congress, and David Grush stood before the congressional committee. He's under oath, and he looks right up at Nancy Mace, representative of South Carolina. And Nancy Mace asked him point blank, did we retrieve bodies from these crashed craft? And David Grush looks right up at her and says, yes, we retrieved biologics. And Nancy Mace comes up with the follow-up question, were these human or non-human biologics? And Grush looks right up at her and says, non-human biologics. My phone doesn't ring. I get a couple of emails. LA, did you see this? This is what I mean. The church is completely asleep at the wheel. And what they don't understand is this ties into biblical prophecy all day long. This is how you get a one-world government and a one-world religious system. And the last chapter of the book, basically the rungs of disclosure, and the 17th run, the end game. And that's where I get into the end game. Nick, you got to remember that every single week on the Ancient Alien show on the History Channel, and I was on the first 2 seasons of that, they promulgate the idea that we were seeded here by an advanced race of extraterrestrials. Your kids and your grandkids are already latching onto that paradigm. And of course, as a Christian, we believe that Jesus spoke everything into existence.
Our author of the week, again, very, very interesting. Definitely so much more, just scratching the surface. L.A. Marzulli, the book Rungs of Disclosure, Following the Trail of Extraterrestrials in the End Times, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. For Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed.
Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, all of your home buying needs, your home selling needs, and she is your access to anything and all things that might be needed upgrades for your home, whether that is part of the closing agreement or whatever you technically call it whenever somebody offers to buy your home, but there are a number of different things that they require get done ahead of time, or before you put it on the market in the first place. She'll come and do an evaluation. She knows what needs to be done if there are updates that need to be done. She knows what updates are going to get you a return versus those that are just expected by the buyer. It's just, some of the things like, well, no, this is just something that needs to be done. And then some of those things that you think might need to be upgraded that is a money loser. So don't do anything without first consulting with her. She has all of that information. She has all the contacts, and she's going to get you connected up with those that are going to do you right. So whether it's buying a home, selling a home, she's so much more than just showing you listings. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 15 and wind chill values as low as -20. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around -2. For your Friday, mostly sunny skies with a high near 29. And for Saturday, sunny with a high near 38.
I wanted to play just some great audio, and it is Stephen Miller. He was on with Brianna Keller from CNN. And this is, of course, discussing Doge. And it's oftentimes really easy to allow the person whose purpose is to make you look bad distract you by asking questions that sort of redefine what's going on. And again, though, Trump has managed to pick individuals that are masterful at responding to these questions and to the propaganda. And the whole, there's all this narrative set by the media with Doge and just how all of, it's all so confusing and chaotic. I mean, you've got Elon Musk and a bunch of teenage boys running around like the Lost Boys, and they're just combing through stuff, and it's just so confusing and so chaotic. We don't even know who's really in charge here. And so she's asking Miller about this.
Charge of Doge.
The President of the United States.
He's the administrator of Doge?
No, the Doge is what was formerly U.S. Digital Services. It's an agency of the federal government that reports into the office of the executive office of the president, which reports to the president of the United States.
Okay.
The way that Article 2 works is a president wins an election, and then he appoints staff, including myself, including Mike Waltz, including Susie Wiles,
Yes.
including Elon Musk, and those staff report to him.
Okay, well aware.
Clearly, you're not well aware. Or if you are well aware, you aren't acknowledging what it is that you are well aware of. I love this approach. It's because what it does is it almost resets the simplicity of this. This really isn't that complicated. One of the approaches that they've been taking is to make it seem chaotic, and you see this in the news stories. They'll, well, according to our sources in this division of government, there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of chaos going. People don't understand what this means. What does this mean? And the mirror image of that presentation is actually the reality of it. There has never been anyone that has come into the presidency. Now, this is Trump's second term, and it's a unique, only twice in a lifetime of the United States scenario in which you have a second term that's non-consecutive. But there has never, be it a first or second term, in modern history at least, any president that has come in that has so surgically, on a mass scale, gotten to work so effectively. This is something that even many of his detractors noted in the first 48, 72 hours of signing executive orders, that it became clear at that point he and his people had been laying the groundwork so that whenever the trigger got pulled, everyone knew exactly where to go, exactly what to do. All of this stuff was very, very well thought out. We've not ever seen such a strategically accurate, on-point approach to dealing with so many things at once. So the opposite, however, is the way that the media is trying to portray this, that it's just chaos. Like Trump just came in and it's day one and he doesn't even know where the bathrooms are, but he's Wreck-It Ralph. And he just is telling people left and right, you over there, you 19-year-old, hey, go over there and find some stuff to cut. And you over there, and that it's just chaos and nobody knows what's going on. And oh my gosh, it's so chaotic and so confusing. And to have the Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, reset the conversation when you have it, and it's this condescending way from Breonna Keller at, who's in charge? Oh, so Elon, I'm just playing dumb here. I don't know. And the simplicity of being like, hey, this is how it works. According to the Constitution, the president gets elected. The elected president then hires advisors, and those advisors have staff, and those staff members, they are tasked with carrying out the president's duties. It's pretty simple. This is not complicated. She went on to continue to try and paint this picture as chaotic, and nobody even knows who's in charge, but clearly not Trump.
Elon Musk a week ago answered a question about transparency at Doge. This is how he spoke about Doge.
Well, we actually are trying to be as transparent as possible. In fact, we post our actions to the Doge handle on X and to the Doge website. So all of our actions are maximally transparent.
You hear him there. We post our actions. All of our actions are maximally transparent. Does Elon Musk know he's not in charge of Doge?
Again, the president runs the government, then the president appoints advisors, including Elon, including myself, including all the other staff here at the White House, and then those staff in turn execute the president's commands and directions to all the agencies of the federal government. This is how democracy works, something that we treasure in America. The whole American people go to the ballot box, they elect the president appoints staff, the staff then administer his orders and directives across the whole U.S. government.
And there were a few more exchanges in which I believe, honestly, that he was trying to make the point that these are questions that, if you're going to ask questions as if you are a 6-year-old in terms of your lack of knowledge and how this works, then I'm going to answer them for you. He almost has brought himself not quite down to the level of a Kamala Harris. And okay, now let me break this down for you, other than he's doing it to make a point. This is how this works. Think about the pettiness and the lack of any sort of intellectualism. Now, here Elon Musk, he said, here's what we're doing. Does he know he's not in charge? You idiot. You know, after a Chiefs game, and, they talk with Butker or they talk with Travis Kelce, and he talks about, well, we're hoping to go into next Sunday doing this, or we're hoping to go into, does he know that he's not the coach? I mean, he keeps talking about we. Sounds like he thinks he's in charge of this. When you're on a team, that's what you do. When you are with a collective group of people in a branch of government or with a financial institution or a nonprofit organization, and you are asked what the organization is doing, you use the term we, because as a group together, that is what you are all working towards. CNN, it is just, it really is a race to the bottom between CNN, MSNBC, CBS's. They all are in a race to the bottom. They can't even be, I don't know, smart in their attempt to paint this as nefarious. Elon Musk said, we. Does he know that he's not in charge? Are you an idiot? I mean, can we just get to that point? I would like for these administration, everybody's doing a great job. I mean, I was going to say, it would be great if every one of these cabinet members, every one of these spokespersons in the moment that is out there answering questions, if they treated the person asking the question, if they ask a stupid question, to treat them like they're stupid. Well, this is how it works. President gets elected. He appoints people, and then those people, they carry out the duties. That's how our system works. But everyone in their own approach thus far has been batting just about as close to 1,000 as you can when it comes to dealing with these people. I am in somewhat awe of how consistently across the board these different individuals within the administration are able to get out there and handle these questions in such a straightforward, succinct manner that demonstrates how absurd the questions are that are being asked and how they do not allow themselves to be trapped. It's almost as if somehow these people were all quarantined away for a while and they were just trained in some sort of hardcore, intense, nonstop, training session on how it is to deal with these people. It's pretty impressive. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Wilder RV, all your RV needs, maybe the furthest thing from your mind as you hunker down and try to keep out of the elements. The idea of being in them, I actually saw as a reel for, I don't even know what it was for, but it was, oh gosh, you're in your RV and oh, you're camping and it's raining outside. Womp womp. It shows the husband and wife and they're looking out the window and it's raining and the implication here is that their weekend in the wilderness is ruined. But then it shows them relaxing on the pull-out couch, watching the big screen TV in their RV, and like, well, hey, this is just as good. That's the great thing about the RV lifestyle is that you can, at your convenience, enjoy the outdoors. You can set up a tent outside. You can sleep just in a sleeping bag under the stars, but if it gets a little too cold or maybe the campsite next to you is a little too rowdy or you just feel like watching The Five or something, you can go right inside your RV and enjoy the lifestyle of the trappings of being inside your home. Best of both worlds. It's like a vanilla and chocolate cookie, all coming together in harmony. Wilder RV, they're your go-to place for all things RV. Clinton, Missouri, just north of Springfield, about 87 miles, and you can find them at wilderrv.com. Kansas City, Missouri, Congressman Emmanuel Cleaver represents the 5th District of Missouri. He says unemployment numbers will rise in Kansas City amid federal job cuts. Sharing, the federal government is the largest employer. There are 30,000 federal employees in Kansas City. Right there, the fact that that is not, to so many people, a massive red flag tells us how far off the beaten path we've gotten. That the federal government is the largest employer. Now, I know the federal government, of course, it spans across the entire nation. And, there are obviously a lot of different corporations and companies, but there's just something about it still. He says that the number does not include postal workers. He also says that, quote, most fair-minded people believe that there can always be trimming back in the federal government and the spending. Well, then why haven't you done it? Chuck Schumer made a similar comment yesterday or the day before. Well, I mean, we're not against cutting. Everyone agrees that we could cut back on spending and we could cut back the size of government. The people who continue to say that are the people who have never done it. Maybe if you had actually practiced what you're now preaching, what you're claiming that you believe, that reasonable people, yeah, we support this, perhaps we wouldn't have to be swinging a hatchet at this stuff. The depraved media, I mean, none of you are going to call out these people on this. This was a Fox 4 story out of Kansas City. Doesn't cross your mind whenever some career politician who has been in elected office longer than many people have even been alive say, well, listen, we all agree that spending should be cut and that we could cut some areas of government. Doesn't cross your mind to ask them why they haven't done that then? Or to ask them, well, what areas are you talking about? Have you recommended these areas to the DOJ committee or to President Trump? Can you identify these areas? If you care so much and you recognize that there are some areas and that these areas are areas that should be dealt with, what are they? Oh, you don't know? This is all BS. Shannon Ellis, president of Chapter 66, National Treasury Employee Union in Kansas City, says that this is unacceptable. I'm furious this is happening on our campus. We're in the middle of tax season, so yes, we know that the public will be impacted. I just can't help but go back to Joe Biden. When you had hardworking Americans that were in jobs organically created because of supply and demand, not because the government created the jobs. And Biden was out there talking about the need and reflecting on the decisions that administrations like his have made in the past, would make in the future, that would eliminate jobs. Eliminate them. Eliminate private sector jobs. and the Democrats' position on those people that lost their jobs at the time.
Anybody who could go down 300 to 3,000 feet in the mine sure and hell can learn how to program as well. Give me a break. Anybody who can throw coal into a furnace can learn how to program, for God's sake.
Now, isn't that an interesting dichotomy that when the Democrats were actively eliminating jobs, talking about the energy sector there, eliminating them, jobs that we're not talking about taxpayer-funded jobs. We're talking about natural, organic jobs that existed because the community of people wanted to purchase the products and services. And then whenever those people are like, hey, but what about our jobs? You hear the condescension there, the almost indignancy? Give me a break. Learn to program. Just go just go to college, go to community college, learn to program. Now those same people clutch their pearls whenever there's talk about redundant positions being done away with. I don't take joy in anyone losing their job. I feel bad for, like I mentioned earlier, given the size of government, we all know someone who is in a government position, and we all may know someone that lose their job because of this much-needed reining in of insane spending and oversized government. But we should not continue down a path of destruction because people we care about are going to find themselves in a position that, frankly, many of us at some point in our lives have found ourselves in. I've lost a job a couple of different times. Many of you probably have as well. So that, recognizing that without making serious changes that will be painful to some, that we will spiral into just oblivion as a nation, economically speaking, recognizing and understanding that, that doesn't mean that you are happy people are going to lose their jobs. You can be sad for those people. You can care about those people, but still recognize the reality of what's going on. And unfortunately, this is the position we put ourselves in. And sometimes when you put yourself in a bad financial situation, Margaret Thatcher made this point once, that, don't get angry at me for fixing the problem. Get angry at the people who created it. And when you, whether it's a company or your family or a country, spend generations making horrific financial decisions that puts you in a very deep hole, getting out of it isn't easy. That is true. But don't blame the fixers. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. The Trump administration expected to issue a public health order recognizing illegal aliens as potential risks for spreading diseases in a move that could restrict immigration. Yes, this needs to happen. You hear these stories about, the biggest tuberculosis outbreak in the Kansas City area happening, or measles down in Texas. You ever notice the complete lack of interest in finding ground zero for those diseases by the media? It's not a coincidence. This isn't anti-vaxxers causing this stuff. This is largely pushed, and it has been for years, by people coming from other countries illegally into this country and spreading those diseases. That's just fact. Glenn Beck's next. I'm Nick Reed.